All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome back to the Wives Club. The Wives Club is now in the mix. I am just like you, a follower of the late, great Kevin Samuels, and I actually booked a session with Kevin when he was with us about a year ago this time. And the reason I booked a session with him was not to ask anything about myself. I actually wanted to give back. I don't have daughters and I don't have sisters, and I would always get convicted when Kevin would say, we're the older women to teach the younger women. And so I asked for his permission to start a community of like-minded and marriage-minded women. He gave us his blessing, and for the better part of a year, we were recording every week in the Patreon in a group we called the Wives Club. And so I believe whether you're currently married, formerly married, or want to be married, we should carry ourselves as wives. And so it started with just me, and then others started to join. So I am a former wife in the Atlanta area.
Your wife from the Boston area. Like Maggie, I also spent some time with Kevin. I had a few coaching sessions with him just to make sure that I was, had the proper marriage mindset, ready to navigate the dating market and definitely have some success. So I'm super thrilled to be here today.
And I am a former wife in the North Carolina area, and I have 2 girls. I have 2 children. We're going to talk about them kids today, ladies and gentlemen, because we need to be mindful about how to navigate the marketplace with children, with wisdom, with discernment, and to position yourself to have the greatest outcome, because it's different, you all. As we know, entering the marketplace with children, it's not just you anymore. You have to consider your children. You have to consider your future wife, for the men that are watching, which will be a mother figure to your children. You have to consider your future husband, which would be a father figure to your children. So we have to take this thing serious. We're going to share some hard truths. This is how Kevin would have rolled. And if you look at his videos, he told the truth. And so we're going to share our experience, and we're going to hope that you walk away with some wisdom to navigate your particular situation. We hope that you walk away with some tangible solutions. Date with more intentionality with children.
All right, so I know we have a question that came in advance, so let's go ahead and start by asking anyone who's watching live, go ahead and type your questions in the chat, and then we'll read your questions if you have any, and then we'll respond, and if you need to add any context. I know, Hermisha, we did have one question come in, so we'll start with that. I'll give a little bit of my own background and my own perspective, but let me read the question so that the wives can all be on the same page. And Lisa, I'm sorry, Hermisha, if you have it and you want to drop it in the chat, that's fine. But this says, let's say a non-parent who is single dates or desires to marry a single parent. What types of firsts can they discover or fulfill together, especially since a single parent has already experienced a life-changing first in being a parent? A non-parent, so a single person that doesn't have kids, will not have experienced what both first-time parents together experience. So a little bit wordy. I'll see if I can get it in the chat. But let me just give you guys my background. One of the things that we do in the Wives Club is we always share our own personal experience. And so again, I will just remind, this conversation is exclusive to the mix. If you want to see any of our previous catalog of work, it's still up in the Patreon. You can join even at the $5 level. Go over to the the community tab, and you can look at all of the work that we've done. This is recorded and posted exclusively in the mix, so we just ask that you respect everyone's privacy. So a little bit about me being a former wife. I was married at 25. I was married for 10 years. That was more of a modern marriage, more of a 50-50 type of marriage. And it ended in divorce, which is now amicable. So I do have experience being married. I do have 2 children from the marriage. So it wasn't a total loss, but I learned a lot. And then since that marriage, I have been in a long-term relationship going on 12 years now with a high value man who is very traditional and has very high standards. So I have experience being, in a 50-50 relationship. I have experience being in more of a traditional relationship, and the work that I've had to do to make that change from that modern mindset to being in a traditional relationship is really kind of my niche. So I just want to give you guys a little bit about where I'm coming from. So as far as dating with kids, the boys were 2 and 4 when I separated. I was married a while, and then we had kids kind of towards the end because we planned it. We wanted to be ready. And unfortunately, the marriage did end in divorce. And although we co-parent well now, and the boys, have a great dad, he's a good man and great dad, just wasn't the right one for me for the long term. I found myself, kind of out here with kids. And I'll be very honest with you guys, I was a little hesitant to even have this conversation because I have some very strong feelings about this. But, in love, we're going to keep it very real. One of the reasons why I did stay in the marriage for as long as I did, even though, and I've shared with you all, I got divorced after 10 years for some of the same warning signs I saw in the first 6 months. So I own that. That's on me. I should have been brave enough to say I made a mistake and I need to walk away. But once the children came, I knew I didn't have the same leverage of being childless and as young, and some of the beauty that you have when you give your best years. And again, I don't regret it. It taught me a lot, but I wanted to keep my nuclear family together as long as I could. So I did stay. Unfortunately, what I see in our community, if I had to sum it up, is we as women expect others to look at our children the way we look at our children. And fundamentally, that is not the case. Kevin said this often, our kids are a liability. And he always used to ask, how can you make your children an asset to another man? And that's a very hard question to answer, because the answer is they're not. It's always going to cost a man more to take on not only you, but your dependents. So, when I was, back out on the market and in transparency, I reconnected with, let's just say, a childhood, love, somebody that I was ready in the beginning, but he needed to take the time to go out there and live his life. And then life brought us back together. So I do know him and he knows me, but we both have children. So I'm dating someone who has children, and it was very difficult in the beginning when they're smaller. I think it depends on the age of the children. And so, I will just say this, and what I've been told, from a man's perspective, they want to live forever, and they want to do that with their own legacy. So we have to really humble ourselves when we're bringing another liability to the table and really outperform. Kevin used to say that, the older women or the women who have been married or the women with children, we should be outperforming because of the experience and the wisdom that we do have. But, I'll stop there and just ask if any of the other wives wanted to chime in. That's just been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're hitting on that question. I couldn't post it in the chat, but essentially the question is that's on deck right now is, if you're seeing somebody who is single, who doesn't have children, you have children, and sort of how to navigate that with first, the woman in the situation might have kids, or maybe the father has kids and the woman doesn't. Either way, how to navigate the first. I think the biggest thing that, as I thought about that question, that we need to consider is, number one, for women, do you plan on having children with the man that you're with? That's important, because legacy for men, like we talked about, is very important. So if you find if a man finds you and he's interested, that's something you want to consider. Are you open to building his legacy? Because it comes down to that. The children you bring into the relationship are really not his responsibility. If he chooses to take you on and your children, that is his choice. And I think that this is the part that might be hard for us, and I want to tread lightly. But a lot of the women have seen my presence. You guys are getting a feel of us as the Wives Club. We try to speak the truth, and we speak the truth in love. And we're speaking from our own personal experiences. So we're just not out here doing spitting knowledge. We are living this. And so one thing I would say, as I talk to some of the ladies who have reached out, it comes down to your heart posture. I can't beat that drum enough. When I say heart posture, meaning, are you expecting that man to take you on and your children, and that he owes you something, and how dare he not want to be a stepfather? Those type of heart dispositions that kind of reeks of the little bit of the entitlement. And we want to move from that to, a more of a posture of humility, where at the end of the day, we understand our identity as women. We were created for the man. We were created to be a helpmeet. So when he chooses, if he chooses to pursue you and make you his, and then take on any children that you come into the relationship with, we should have a heart of gratitude. In addition to that, the question, so I don't get derailed, the question was then, so we're together, or the guy's vetting you, then what about the first? So I would just say, are you willing to have his children? Number one, I would just say that. And number two, let's say you are, and that's sort of a first that y'all can experience together, having children together, building his legacy, right? In addition to the blended household. But also the other thing that I want to highlight, that Kevin hits on, the quality of a high demand woman or a high value woman that we all should ascribe to be. And I really appreciate what he was doing there, because he's talking about the internal heart disposition of a woman. And the last point of that he mentioned, is she exuberant, or does she have this level of enthusiasm? So a lot of the first, from what I'm hearing from these high value men, a lot of, whether you want to have the man's kid and that's a first that y'all can experience, or a man that's pursuing you and he wants to experience maybe taking you on a trip or other things, and maybe you have done those things in your life as a single woman. Men, it comes down to this: are you going to be exuberant or enthusiastic, even if you have gone to Greece before and he wants to take you? You've tried that meal before. Are you excited to experience it with him? That's the key, ladies. So I just wanted to hit on that. But if you can give that man some babies, give that man some babies. That's all I gotta say about that.
That's great,
Yeah.
Harmeisha.
And for anyone who just joined, whatever questions that you have, feel free to put them in the chat. What I did is I put a link to the screenshot of the question in the chat. So the question, it looks like it's coming from a woman, and for me it was a little bit vague, but she's basically asking, let's say a non-parent marries a single parent, what kind of first can they discover together? So I'm going to answer the question, then I'm going to stop tap dancing around something that's been on my heart and just kind of hit it a little bit hard. So forgive me, but it's really the truth. And I think we have to start being honest with ourselves. Okay. So to answer the question, to me, it depends on who has the child. I don't know if this is a man with children who's marrying a woman without children. I don't know if it's a woman with children that is marrying a man that doesn't. But to me, ultimately, like Kevin always used to say, we have to customize ourselves to the man that we want or that wants us. So if you have a high caliber man, whether he's a Henry or whether he's a high value man, and you realize how valuable he is, our job is to mold ourselves to him. So for me, for example, I came into the relationship with 2 children. I was not going to have, we decided not to have any more children together, because I'll be honest and say, I don't necessarily believe in the big, beautiful blended family. I'll be a little bit transparent with you all. So when we got divorced, my ex-husband gets, I think on paper, every other weekend, but because the kids were so small and he's a great dad, he was getting the boys every weekend, and it was working great. I did the heavy lifting during the week, and then I had time off on the weekends to recover. My ex-husband is now remarried, and his new wife didn't want the kids over every weekend. Now, we can say whatever you think about that, but things changed. And so I realize now, whenever there's a dynamic and a breakup and a remarriage, you have to kind of be able to, pivot and adjust. And I could feel some kind of way about it, but that's my reality. And so now, things are a little bit different. But what I would offer is, if your to-be husband wants children, make sure you're ready to do that willingly. And the children that you bring into the relationship are your responsibility. And we have to understand as women that men look at their legacy as their own, and they do not look at our children like their children. Now, they may protect and they may provide, but we can't expect that of them. If you're so fortunate to have one that does cover you and your children, consider it a blessing. That is rare. That is extremely rare. So we have to understand that. Kevin used to talk about that all the time. What would happen in the animal kingdom when a new lion comes into the pride? They get rid of the male children. And I'm not saying that should happen at all, but we can't expect a new man to take our children in and divide his resources equally. That's what we're bringing to the table. And I will just say this, Kevin always used to talk about, our value in our youth and our beauty, but that womb part is really important, and who we decide to have children with matters. And if you have children from a marriage, or if you have children that you weren't married from, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it matters, especially the type of man that you want to have. He's going to have to speak on your behalf. Kevin used to say this, and we all used to kind of bristle, but if you come into a relationship with children and they weren't children from marriage, and men talk and in boardrooms, and they'll ask, who is your ex-husband? And we have to think about the type of position that puts our potential man in. So the decisions that we make when we're younger, even if the marriage ends up in divorce, at least it starts at a better position. We already have to overcompensate when we come in with children or whatever, baggage we have from the past. But I just wanted to say that. And I hear this often sometimes in boss babe women that, oh, I can do it all. And, mom wasn't married or whatever, but that does not fly in the world and the circles that we want to be in. So for any younger women who are just thinking, oh yeah, you don't have to be married to have a kid. No, you don't have to be, but it will cost you, because who you have kids with, you are instant family forever. So think about that for life. Just wanted to add that. Any other wives? I don't see any other questions coming through. But
Yeah, I feel like I should have had a drink of water, because this is really important. I mean, these are hard truths, but to be aware of nonetheless, essentially, because it's a lot of different dynamics involved, and we're not here to address all the dynamics. That's why we're sort of opening it up for, if there's questions, put them in the chat. We love to address maybe specific scenarios. But with that said, and on Margaret's point about women, we can only speak to the women here. I'm sure the men have their approach. We have to work a little harder in terms of, you're entering the marketplace with children. That's just a fact. Now, you do have a better position if your children were from a previous marriage, in terms of how men view the situation. But they also are looking at the type of ex-husband you had as well, because that is your child's father, no matter what. So we're kind of just bringing up these realities to be more conscious, so that you're aware of that. And then, like we talked about, the heart disposition, if the man did choose to take you on, that's not, he doesn't have to do that, having that sort of not expecting him to care for your kids in the manner that you expect him to care for them if they were his biological children, is what we're saying. But I think this kind of helps us transition into, well, then if I have children and I'm going to be entering the marketplace, or I'm in the marketplace, what will set me apart? How do I become a high demand or high value woman with children? And this is the encouragement. We want to give you the truth, but there's also some encouragement in this, because Kevin talked about this as well, in terms of the qualities of a high value woman. And you can still be that and shoot for that, even if you have children. And so one of the things I guess I wanted to highlight, if it's okay to transition into that, I don't see any questions, just to hit on this, because he talked to the men about what is a high value man and all the things. And we know there's other types of men, but at the end of the day, we all want quality partners. We all want quality spouses, you guys. And so that's the goal we're shooting for all of us, is what we're saying. And if that's the case for the women, he mentioned some particular character traits that whether you have, that's who you want to ascribe to be. He says she's attractive and appealing, number one. Number two, she has a comforting character. Number three, she's disciplined and discerning. Number four, she has the sense of enthusiasm and exuberance about her. She has a joyful spirit. And number five, she's loyal and liberating. These are character traits, you all. You can come in with children, but word on the street, what I've been hearing is that men want to know what's going on inside of you. Yeah, they're going to be looking at, okay, what's the father looking like? What, is she attractive? She's appealing, but what is inside of you is what's important. Because these men are looking for women that they can trust. Can you manage a household? Can they trust you with their finances? All these character traits, right? Is she useful to the group? Right? Because you're an asset to him. So the thing that we're really trying to highlight, you want to have wisdom in navigating the dating space with children, but at the end of the day, you want to become the best version of yourself, especially with children, but in general, to maximize your outcome, to know what you bring to the table. I was listening to Kevin's show the other day, and again, just reminding how we have to be clear on what's your wife resume. I remember I posted a sample of points you need to hit on to highlight what you bring to the table. Men of value do not care about your money. They don't care about your degrees. I'm a PhD candidate. That's not what I put on my wife resume, unless it involves me working for my man and highlighting those skills that can help my man. You see what I'm saying? They're looking at, are you malleable? Are you flexible? Can you easily fit into a man's life? If he said, baby, I really want you to move here. I see a life here for us. You obviously, you guys got to work out the custody, and you got to look at that too. Can you up and move easily? Do you need to petition the court? Do you work remotely? Right? Can you easily fit into a man's life? Are you submissive? Do you have a level of self-awareness? Can you work a room? Do you have the woo factor? All of these qualities are just as important that we want to highlight so you can maximize your positioning in the marketing with or without children. With children, I just want to highlight that.
Absolutely. I've got some more thoughts. I didn't see any other questions in the chat, but so I'll give you guys some things that I've done if it's helpful in dating with kids. So when I got divorced, again, the boys were 2 and 4. And number one, because it is so much work, like I always said, be very, very mindful of who you do choose to have children with. But if they're already here, they're already here. If a man asks you out, he is asking you out. y'all know I don't know much about pop culture and some of the stuff that I'm hearing, but expecting, to bring kids on dates, absolutely not. Expecting him to pay for kids or take out, for the kids or whatever, absolutely not. If he offers, be gracious. Thank you. But expecting a man to do that, no, he's looking to you. Your children are your responsibility. That was the one thing. So let's say, we're all going out and we have kids the same age. And he said, hey, bring the kids. We're going to Chick-fil-A. I would come with my wallet prepared to pay for my children. And only when he said, oh no, I've got it, it's fine. Are you sure? But I never expected, even though he asked, I was prepared to cover my own. That was one thing that I did. Because my ex-husband and I share custody, I tried to date when the boys were at their dad's. I don't show any public display of affection when the kids are present, but what I do show is 100% submission and respect. So when my man comes over, I stand up, I greet him at the door. It may be a gentle hug or he may give me a quick peck on the cheek, but I want the kids to see how a woman responds to a man. If I'm cooking dinner for the family, I serve him first. If he wants a special cut of meat or a special piece of fish or whatever, I let the kids know, you can have this, but you can't have that. It's important for me that the kids see that, yes, you are my child, but you will grow up and have a life of your own. And mom is putting the work in. Now we've got to be able to chew gum. Walk and chew gum at the same time. And it's hard. Kevin said that. That's why, if you could, it's already hard when you don't have kids, but when you do have kids, this is where we as women have to overperform. I make sure that I have a good, solid home routine that I have established before I have a man come over. So if he does, and the kids are here, we're watching a movie or whatever, I'm making popcorn for everybody. They know movie goes off, it's bedtime, bath time, there's not this chaos. How many times did we hear women call into Kevin's show and the kids were running amok in the house? It is our responsibility for our children. I can only speak to women who have kids. I'm just sharing with you guys some things that I've done, but you've got to establish that routine. And before you have that in place, I don't think we are ready to date, because a man is looking at our life to see if he can envision himself in the life that we have, and can we mold ourselves to him. So if it's chaotic, I don't think we're ready. So there's just a few things that we have to do and consistently do, because again, the men are always watching, and they may make decisions from afar, and they see you and they say, yeah, I don't want any part of that. So those are just a few things that I've done. Anything else, Hermisha, or nothing else in the chat?
Yeah, if I may, I'm checking the chat, just to speak personally as well. As a former wife, I'm in North Carolina. I have 2 girls, 5 and 8. And, I know I'm a wife, and I know that when I'm ready to actively date, that I've been preparing myself to enter the market. And one thing that's been conscious on my mind is with the custody arrangement between me and my ex. This is very important, freedom to move should I need to. It's really important. Those of you who've been formally married or have custody orders, you want to look at, again, for women or future wives, if you want to be remarried, having that flexibility to possibly move. Now, my situation is a little bit different. I have 2 girls. Also, you have to look at the gender of your children, as opposed to someone maybe who has boys, and maybe there's a certain age you consider, maybe he's best off with his father. Are you willing to do that? It's really important. So that's something that I've been doing, as well as I work remotely. I intentionally shut down my physical practice. I run one of the leading trauma practices in my area. That's just what I do. But I close my brick and mortar building just to work remotely, because you just never know. You know what I mean? So you're positioning yourself to be where you need to be should someone pursues you. But also, I like to be home. I like to nurture the home. So that's just, I'm a traditional wife. I have executive skills, but in general, I'm traditional at my core. So you got to know the type of wife you are as well to make those moves for the best interest of your children and for your future spouse. So important, because you want to maximize outcomes when you enter the dating world, especially with children. So I just wanted to point that out regarding the idea, the point of can you mold into a man's life?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some other things that I'm thinking about. No other questions?
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add on to what Hermisha was saying. Also, from a financial standpoint, that may make sense too. Just in case, to Hermisha's point, if you do meet someone and it's time and it's ready to rock and roll, you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. So that's something I've also kind of learned over the past year, is just be ready financially. That could definitely help as well.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that with the preparedness. Okay, Jason, I see your hand is raised. I'm just going to get this thought out, and then definitely we'll let you. Not only the financial preparedness, but the physical preparedness, which I have to be honest, this has been a struggle for me. But when we have children, we all know how exhausting it can be. But I have had to be very intentional that I don't give my man what's left of me at the end of the day, after I've been running around and at swim and at school and this and that. When he comes through the door, there is a meal. I am freshly showered. I am there warm and welcoming. I am, giving him my best. And that takes a lot out of me. But because I respect the caliber of man that he is, and he's making the effort to be in relationship with me, I want to make sure that I give him a reason to continue to choose me, because he doesn't have to choose me. So I wanted to make sure that we set expectations for ourselves. Again, it all circles back to, we got to be really intentional about, when and who we have kids with. The other thing that I'll say, and then we'll turn it over to Jason, he's got his hand up. Sometimes, you all, we just have to let some of the dream go. And I'm not saying that, give up hope. That's not it at all. But I would have loved to have, children with the man that I'm with. But we made a decision that they both have parents. We already have children. We want to be with each other. And so we are postponing marriage until the kids are up and out. When they were little, it was really hard for me to think, oh my gosh, that's going to be another, 7, 8, 10, 12 years. But now with 2 kids in high school, it's kind of like I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's a sacrifice. It's a huge sacrifice. I think for me personally, if there was a time to get remarried, it probably would have been quickly after my divorce, and have children for him quickly, so that all of the kids can be raised together. But once they get into elementary and middle school and they form their personalities, and this is my dad and that's not, and everything that comes along with it, y'all know how it is. I don't think that I would be the best wife having that type of, tension at home. So for our relationship, we made the decision, when I'm home with the kids, I'm mom. When they go to their dads, then I'm, free to be Margaret. And so we won't have a blended family. When both of our, sets of kids are gone, then we will, sail off together, I guess, in our golden years. So just putting that out there, that we may have to sacrifice some of the dream that we want for the happiness at the end. I'm going to mute myself. And Jason, you had your hand up, so I'm going to let you go ahead and chime in.
Good evening, everyone. And good evening, good day to all the baby mamas on the call. Love you. One of the things I've heard that is definitely a benefit for many of you ladies is that you had your children when you were married. So that does speak volumes to many. If you weren't married when you had your child, no, it's not a doom and gloom. No, it's not casting all hope into the ocean and saying goodbye. But it's definitely a plus for that.
Thank you for saying that, Jason. And, you guys, it's just the honest truth. I think we can get a lot farther in our community if we stop sugarcoating some things. And I know a lot of times people hated the way Kevin said it. And that's what I hope to foster here in the Wives Club, is that we can have those hard truths in love. But same thing, y'all know I got to raise my hand. What was Kevin's big thing? Fit, feminine, and friendly. I have struggled with fitness. That has been an issue, for me. I have to be very mindful that that my weight problem doesn't turn into a health problem. And so, I may have been married before I had my kids, but have I always been my fittest? No. And so that's something that I have to be very mindful of and try to bring my best self. So we all have a struggle. It's not the end of the world, but what we can't do is just say, I'm perfect. I'm a 10 the way that I know I'm average. And, and I got 2 kids and I'm 46, about to be 47. So when I tell you I have to anticipate his needs, I've got to be on it, doggone it. I got to show him more respect than any, woman that he meets in the workplace. I got to make sure that he sees me at my best. I light up when he calls. He hears it in my voice. He sees it. Like, I continuously work on earning it. And I'm in 12 years, happier than I've ever been, but it is work. So let's not, fall asleep at the wheel. Trust me, it's worth it, but it's work. Okay, we've got something in the chat here. Ebony says, any advice on joint bank accounts or experiences?
I would say something like that is when you are very, very far in. I would advise, just because I work in the banking industry, guys, I would advise that you do keep your expenses separate until there is, some solid foundation, firm relationship roots, firm plans for the future, and going from there. But I always advise that things should be separate unless it's official, right? Or if you are married, right? Typically, couples will start their joint accounts when they are at the inception of a marriage. That's also something that's important, just also from a legal standpoint, because also a law student. Prenups, we talked about prenups before, and this is exactly why you want to keep your finances separate until you have these deeper discussions. So that's my opinion on it. But I think that is a very, very sound financial, and not a lawyer yet, but legal advice as well.
Absolutely. Hermia.
Yeah, no, I think Evelyn hit the nail on the head. I mean, we just want to be really mindful of, we're not merging stuff before we say I do. Because again, when children are involved, it's confusing for them. So yeah, and that kind of transitions into the next question, but I don't want to jump ahead. I think you had a thought.
Yeah, I'll just offer, I think whether there are kids or whether there are not, the model that I would support is kind of his, hers, and ours. I say do, whatever works for you and your relationship, but especially when there are children, of course, there's going to be the household money, and then he may have accounts that he has access to. I do think it's important for us to come to the marriage with assets, because our children are already a liability, and show a track record of being able to manage that. So I'll give you guys some tangible examples. I already have college funds for both of my boys. I started that years ago when they were little. My expectation is to work as long as they're in college. We have a plan because, now I'm in a traditional relationship and he would like to sit me down, but the plan is that I will be sat down 55 as opposed to 65. Now, some people could say, oh, I don't want to work a day as soon as I get married. For me, that's not realistic. I'm already bringing 2 children into the relationship that I feel responsible for. So I feel like as long as the boys are in high school or in college, I should be financially responsible for them. So I have savings accounts for them. I have insurance for them, all of this in my name before the relationship. If and when I do get married, of course, some things will be mixed, but I will have assets set aside for the children. I shared with you all last time, I did not get a prenup in my first marriage. And because I was the breadwinner, I took a huge hit. It cost me $80,000. I've recovered from it, but second time around, I would absolutely get a prenup. And I love and trust the man that I'm with more than anything. But we just have to kind of separate our emotions from what's smart, because you all know, whenever there's a death in the family, unfortunately, sometimes greed and things rear their ugly head. So we just have to be smart and be responsible and think ahead. I want my, this, that, and the third to go to my children. And I fully expect he to do the same for his children. What I want from him is a life together and whatever experiences we have together. But he is a provider, but I'm not expecting him to take from his legacy to take care of mine. So I just wanted to share that. That was my thoughts on the joint bank accounts or experiences. So I do see Crystalline's question, but I see Jason has his hand up. So any thoughts on that one, Jason? If you're speaking, you're muted.
There we go. Oh, I think that's a great question, and I think that's a great answer. Speaking of assets and money in regards to kids, and by the way, I'm a single father myself. Ladies, knowing how much your children cost is definitely a help for the quality men that you will be dating. So knowing that number will help the man to assess whether he can afford the kids and you. One thing that will help oftentimes, ladies, is if your number, how much of a financial responsibility is he taking on for you as his wife? If that number is lower, then it's more feasible for a lot more men to adequately and financially support you. Kevin oftentimes used the metric, what percentage of the household bills, meaning the cost of living for the household, do you want to have to be responsible for? And across the board, women did not want to have to be responsible for more than 15%. So if the whole household budget is $100,000, she doesn't want to have to be responsible for more than $15,000. So if you ladies were to find yourself in a relationship dating a man who is financially stable, the question you may want to consider is, if I downgraded the hours that I worked so that I could pay for my children in and of myself, how much then is the financial responsibility that I'm bringing going to cost this man? And it feels kind of crazy and bad. It feels like you're kind of on the slave block when you start putting a number to yourself and all that stuff. But it is very helpful. So if 15% you don't want to be, let's say in this scenario, responsible for more than 15%, $15,000 of that $100,000, question then, how much do your kids cost a year?
That's a great point. And thank you, as the only man that I see in the live stream. Thank you for that, Jason. And you all, I'm always here to be transparent and give you guys my real world experience. I don't have a lot of dating experience, but I do have relationship experience. And Jason is right. My man asked me to put a spreadsheet together. And y'all, I was almost kind of like, what do you mean? He was like, no, I need to see how much do you cost every month? And I was like, how much do I cost? Like, what am I? Just, a line item? The answer is yes. Men look at us differently. We are an expense, and we have to realize that, and we have to be okay with that. Okay. This is just how they look at the world. We can't take offense to it. So I could have bucked up. I could have argued. I could have been like, that's my business. But what I did is I went online and I got a template of a monthly budget, and I filled that thing out with my mortgage, with the school fees, with the meals, with everything that I do. And I opened myself up and I shared it with him. And he was like, okay, I can handle that. And if I had made it a big deal, that could have been a move backwards. But he actually just wanted to know that number, not to get in my business, so that he could be comfortable absorbing it. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's probably something I should have done a long time ago, but now I can rattle it off because I know what I'm bringing to the table, for bringing, not to the table, but what I'm bringing and asking for myself and for my kids. So yeah. We did have another question in the chat from Crystalline. So thoughts on time frame when you should introduce your kids. This is a big one. I'll give my thoughts and then I'll let the other wives chime in. I would not introduce my kids unless it was serious. And by serious, I mean it's a commitment. If I'm casually dating, you won't see my children. I'm not bringing them to any functions. I'm not calling anybody auntie or uncle so-and-so. Absolutely not. And that did limit me, because if I had 48 hours on the weekend when the boys were at their dad, I basically had to make it work during that time frame, because other than that, I'm mom. But no, you do not have access to the children. And likewise, I do not want access to your children unless it is, a commitment. And we're actually in this, I would say, for several months, close to a year.
I would just co-sign everything you just said. I mean, I'll hat on if I may. We're talking about children. We're talking about they're impressionable. We're talking about the brains are developing. We're talking about imprinted memories. We're talking about things that they remember. What happened to so-and-so? It's confused. It can be confusing, and it can be just as, dare I say, traumatizing if that relationship doesn't work out. If they were introduced to the guy too soon, or the woman too soon. You know what I mean? You're already sort of lamenting the relationship. Then you got to lament how your kids have, So I would say, yeah, don't even, not even if you're on a video call and they see them or whatever. They shouldn't even know what your children, they shouldn't even be speaking to your children. Now, you might share some photos, if you vetted the person where it's safe enough to do so. You don't just want to be sharing your kids in general. But I'm really particular about this. It's important because you have little ones. And also I was raised by my father, and he'll own this, so I'll share this. He dated. My daddy was hunting, looking for his wife. And I got attached to some of these women, and they didn't work out, and that hurt me. I was like, that was my second mama, but it didn't work out. And I was a teenager then. So can you imagine the little ones too? So we just want to be mindful.
Absolutely. And I'll just chime in. We have, I'll read what's in the chat, but just to chime, a boy mom, and it's, all the children are blessed and beautiful, but also a handful. And I've had to realize and check my ego at the door that I'm mom, and I will never be anything more than that. I have my role, but I'll be honest with you guys, I got 2 teenage boys that don't always like each other, and I didn't break up a fist fight, but there was a fist fight, this week. And so what I've had to do, at the encouragement of my man, when he says, no, they're not going to listen to you, they need their father, I've had to humble myself and pick up the phone and call their dad. And last year, one of my sons finished the semester at his dad. So again, even if the relationship ends, as much as you can to keep it amicable as far as a co-parenting situation will help you in your dating prospects, because that takes the chaos away from you. And again, having to humble myself and say, you know what? I may be super mom in some sense, but I can't do this. I need some help. And it was actually one of the best decisions that we made. And that shows me being teachable and coachable, and that I will listen and take instruction from a man who's not my children's father, but who is a man and understands what boys need. So I just wanted to share that as a boy mom. So there was something in here from Santana. So she's asking Jason, and I'll just read it for the sake of the call. So
Santana's
Jason,
a male.
I am so sorry. I did not know that. I'm sorry, Santana. So Jason, are we suggesting that a woman should be working part-time with children? And Jason is responding, Santana, well, it's up to each individual couple. Having said that, women knowing that their portion of the financial load only requires them to work part-time, this relieves the pressure of her having to always this relieves the pressure off her having to always be working a 40-hour week job. Okay. I did see something. I know we're coming up on time, but Ebony is sharing. You created an Excel with all of your debt and monthly expenses, so you always have that available. That's wonderful. I know any of us who are candidates for being a wife, I think we should take the time. Don't be like me and wait until he asks you, and then you're looking like a deer in the headlights. Go ahead and do it now. Go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off now, and know your number. Know your monthly number for yourself and for your kids, because how can we expect a man to absorb that if we don't even know what we're asking for? Oh, and Jason says he's got a great Excel sheet if anyone needs it. So that's what I see in the chat. This was a tough one, but I think this was really good. I'll just say, in love, you guys, I know it's hard, and the children situation, it's kind of a lightning rod because we know we all have that visceral reaction. But I guess the biggest takeaway that I've had to understand is that my kids are my kids, and I can't get in my feelings if he doesn't swoop in and rescue. I have to deal with whatever's happening with my kids and then get myself together and put my best foot forward for the man. That's the only way that I'm able to be a candidate, because what did Kevin always say? There's always someone younger, there's always someone more beautiful, and there's always someone childless. So if we're expecting a man to leap over all of those hurdles and choose us, it better be worth his time. Anything else to add before we close out?
No, I thought this was an interesting conversation and really happy to contribute to it.
Hermisha, anything else before we close out?
Yeah, this is a great topic. Obviously, we didn't hit on all the scenarios that present themselves. We just sort of wanted to give you some brief tangibles to consider when navigating the marketplace with children. You want to be wise, you want to be discerning. You want to know the type of man you're looking for if you have children. I know for myself, he most likely will have children. Maybe they might be around my kid's age. He might have a heart for adoption, kind of like big families. But you know what I mean? You just got to know what that is for you. And you also have to be, you also want to put your best foot forward. It's not over for us as women. It's not over for the men, obviously, that have children. We also want to be looking at the men in terms of the ex-wives and the dynamics between the mothers, and you just want to just be wise, discerning, and vetting properly, but more importantly, putting your best foot forward, being the highest version of yourself, and doing your part and going from there. I just thank everybody for being here and your questions. If there are more questions, post them in the mix. And you guys know I'm available to serve you. And we just thank you.
Absolutely. This has been a great one. And I'll just say, I also offer consultations. If anybody wants to have a one-on-one private conversation, I will drop the link in the mix. You can book a session, either half an hour or an hour, if you want to pick my brain from anything we've discussed today. So we are with you guys every week. If you're not able to catch it live, it will be recorded and put in the mix. And again, this is exclusively to the mix. So thank you all for respecting everyone's privacy as we continue to share and improve all of our outcomes. So that's it for today. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.